Welcome to Zen and the Art of Real Estate Investing. What if you could learn from experienced real estate investors, find out what got them to where they are now, get insight into their daily habits, and take these insights to inspire your own growth? Each week, Jonathan Green shares an in-depth look at the mindful approach to real estate investing. Jonathan is a lifelong real estate investor, advisor, and coach, as well as the founder and team leader of Streamlined Properties. Whether you're looking to start from scratch, get to the next level, or just for a straightforward and honest approach to real estate investing, Jonathan seeks to provide a free mentorship program you can take with you anywhere. Now, here's Jonathan.
Welcome back to another episode of Zen and the Art of Real Estate Investing. And if you think that you can't do this, real estate investing that is, this is the show for you. My guest is Laura Navaquin. She goes through it, how it started with a weekend class. Yes, one of those. And it led to her starting in wholesaling with her husband and then getting going. And then it was on from there. So listen for the story and listen for the motivation to let you know that you can do this. Let's get to Laura. This is episode 241 of Zen and the Art of Real Estate Investing with my guest, Laura Navaquin. Laura is a mother, wife, entrepreneur, speaker, and a successful real estate investor with her husband who started doing it with little to no money down. Laura, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me today.
Yeah, I like to hear these stories of how people got started, but especially harder without money in the beginning. So what led you to real estate in the first place?
Yeah, so I say ultimately, I never saw myself in the industry or going down the road of real estate at all. It was actually my husband who had the idea. I was in the insurance industry, group health insurance, a number of years ago, and my husband had kept I would say whispering in my ear or mentioning it every now and then. So to me, getting involved in real estate was potentially one day to have a second home that we rent out occasionally, something to that regard. And we were living in New York City at the time, and there was a conference coming through town. So I figured, hey, this is my opportunity. I'll sign us up for this. And it piques his interest. Let's go to this and see what it's all about. So we went to it as a 4-day seminar. Got to hear some wonderful speakers, were introduced to some wonderful investors, brand new, some that had been in it, 20 years and had some amazing stories. Like, long story short, we were so impressed. I learned so much about real estate at that point in time, or at least as far as what's investing in real estate involved, that we ended up signing up because they were selling the mentorship, the courses and everything, the whole deal there. So we ended up signing up, and we worked full time, but we were also working side gigs and everything else in New York City to pay off student loans because we both had student loans. And
it's New York City, so everything costs too much.
New York City, exactly. So we used a combination of credit cards and took out a $30,000 loan to pay for the courses. And so we figured, okay, we're going to make this work, but we are going to start with wholesaling because it doesn't require any money from the start. And once we make up or start getting rolling with wholesaling, then we'll make a move or transition from that. And of course, it was a little nerve-wracking and scary. And so we were motivated and ready to go. But at the same time, in the back of my mind, I had that little voice like, what did you really do? You're trying to pay off student loans, and then you just take out another huge loan. But that was all really the start of it. And, every day my husband and I would get home from work and we would have these study sessions. We'd read and do courses and go to Starbucks after work, and just that was our after work dates or weekends. We'd go, and we were really set to making this work. And so ultimately we got started with wholesaling the first couple of years, and it was great. Of course, after, like many things most people do, after you get one or two, a couple in on the books, it gets a little easier. You get more comfortable and more confident with what it is that you're doing. And that's how we initially got started in real estate.
Well, I mean, let's go back to the motivation aspect, because I think there are a lot of people who say, oh, great, I'll go to a seminar and maybe I'll sign up. But they go in, and a lot of people even sign up with big checks and think that the course is just going to do all the work for them. You guys clearly knew you were going to do the work and committed to that. How do other people not fall into the trap of just thinking if they pay the big mentorship, it's just all going to make everything happen for them, because we both know that's not the way it works.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. I know. I feel like I have that conversation with folks sometimes now that I encounter that are brand new, starting out or looking to get started. And they're like, what mentor or what should I really invest in order to make it work? Or I'll come to me and ask questions. And of course, I try to share information with others that are starting based on the knowledge that I have gathered through the years of experience. But at the same time, I share with them, if you don't have consistency with dedicating yourself to it, it's not just going to land on your plate with anything else. You know, if you're trying to lose 10 pounds, we don't just necessarily lose
One
10
run.
pounds. Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah, and I think that's important though, because people go in with different mindsets on how it's going to work. But really, when you're investing the money into a mentorship program, people think, oh, you're investing in the mentorship. You're not. You're investing in yourself, because you're the one who has to do the work. And that's clearly what you guys took from it and said, hey, we're going to study afterwards. This is going to be fun. We're going to do it together, which I'm sure helped having someone else who's just as motivated, who of course you're also married to. So you're like, this is it. But was it real estate? Were you thinking like, hey, this is going to be generational wealth? We need something besides our careers to fall back on. And what was so attractive about the concept, and then that you got pushed through from the course?
Yeah, I think it was a combination of things. So one was building generational wealth in the long run. We didn't have any children at the time. So part of it was building that future for our future selves and our children to come. And then the other aspect of it was to better set ourselves up for paying off those student loans, because I'll speak for myself. I won't even speak for my husband's, but I had nearly $100,000 in student loans.
And that's common.
It very much is between undergrad and grad school. So being able to pay that off, we knew eventually at the time we weren't married, we were dating, living together. So we knew we wanted to get married, and I wanted my dream wedding. But then of course, how foolish does that sound to go spend, tens of thousands of dollars on a wedding? But we figured that this was going to also be a financial remedy to being able to provide us that security to pay off loans, being able to buy a house one day. Still didn't have the idea that we'd eventually one day own a portfolio of homes. Still thought, okay, maybe a couple that we'd rent out down the road. It just seemed like I won't say completely unrealistic. It just seemed, oh, that would be nice, but is that really us, or would that happen for us? Until you just get rolling and you surround yourself with the right mindset and the right people that encourage you as well, that make it attainable, make you believe that it's attainable. You just need to go out there, set yourself up, putting yourself out in, stepping out of your comfort zone as well. So that's a lot of it, as with anything else.
I feel like the people are so important, because when you're new, like you said, it just seems like, well, those people are doing it, but it's just not me. And then if you go to enough meetups or enough conferences, someone comes along and you're like, wait, you're just like me. You have, 39 multifamilies. How did that happen? And then they tell you, and that's when the light bulb goes off. Did you find those people just at the conference, first of all, saying like, wow, okay. I mean, they started just like we did. They had student loan also. So then you see, okay, it is attainable, but it takes work.
Exactly.
Yeah, I've always found that the people can listen to these podcasts, which I think are great. It's a great way to download information. You can read books. Books are phenomenal, but taking action still requires you seeing someone who's kind of like you doing what you want to do, because until you see that, you won't be sure that it's possible, really.
Exactly. I agree.
Yeah. So let's talk wholesaling, because it gets a bad name. There are good wholesalers. There are very bad wholesalers, but I'm sure will agree that it's a very hard business to get started in. How did you guys get started without the money, and how did you start finding deals? Because I know there's a lot of people who want to get to investing through wholesaling, and some do it, a lot don't.
Yeah. So when we first got started, as I shared before, we went that route because it didn't involve, purchasing a property. We needed money for down payment or whatever it may be. So we went the route of wholesaling, because it didn't require a large sum of money. And at that point in time, we didn't really have anything extra after having taken out the loan. Yeah. So of course we studied. We had a mentor come out, and she actually only came out for a week, and that was part of the package that we had. So we had access to her via email and so forth for a whole year, but she only came out to meet us in person and hit the ground running for a weekend. Yeah. And we actually went out in New Jersey. She gave us a source of information as far as what to look for. And it matched everything that you're reading, but to go out and see it in person and have a better mental idea. After that, I feel that gave us a lot more confidence in going out and knowing what to look for and how to reach out. And I say that wholesaling, this was 10 years ago when we got started. It has evolved so much since then because weren't necessarily using a lot of the different technology that's available to access phone numbers and contact information. So we were literally
less skip tracing, less
we were not
text.
using skip tracing or anything of that sort back in the day. So I say it's only 10 years ago, but it was 10 years ago at the same time. So we would literally take the bus or the train into New Jersey and we'd literally walk for dollars. So we'd walk around, we'd write notes, we'd leave Post-its on people's doors in their mailbox, take that information back and spend another day going out and going to the counties to look up information to find out the owner's information and then literally reaching out to them. And some of them would just call you back from the notes that you left. Some were pleasant and wanted more information, and others were very upset that you even stopped at their house and considered their house for a wholesale. But we would go look up public information and reach out to them. And that's how we were doing it from the beginning. And eventually, after getting that first one, so closing that with the title company and so forth, getting that first check, I feel was really our confidence boost because we're like, really, we could do this. It took us about almost 4 months or so. But after that, just getting that confidence, like, okay, we can continue doing this and let's set up our schedules. And maybe we don't have to be out every other day, but we can plan it. So some days we'd go walk and then eventually drive for dollars. So we did have a car, but just New York City parking is chaotic. So we'd go out certain days and plan what days we were going to drive for dollars, leave notes, and then what days we were going to go look up public information and reaching out, writing hand notes and postcards and mailing them out that way as well. That's how we were doing our leads. So we were doing mailers, but we were handwriting them and mailing them out, the postcards. And that's how we were getting our I would say for the first couple years, how we were contracting our wholesales.
I mean, that's how I grew up. I mean, I grew up, walking for dollars, driving for dollars when I could drive. And I still think it's the best method. I really feel like people are using technology the wrong way. There's a lot of technology now that can assist us to be more efficient when we're trying to buy off market. But just as we were saying with the coaching and mentorship, I think people are relying on it to do the work, when really the job of any program is to get you in touch with somebody. Once you get in touch with them, you have to do the rest. They're not, the app isn't going to, close the deal and figure out where the seller's going and make sure that their kids know that they're, not getting the house. These things are all things that are outside. How did you guys learn the dialogues as you go? And I'm sure during those first 3 or 4 months until you got the first check, you realize like, okay, here's the things that we did that work. And here's the things that we do that didn't seem like a good use of time. So that's how you could cut down the time you were spending, right?
Exactly. So everything's trial and error. And still to this day, we put together, I don't like to call them scripts, but put together outlines of conversations when we're going to reach out to somebody. And then we modify that. And everything is so custom once you're on the phone with somebody, no matter having 10 years of experience now down the road, we still use an outline as far as what we're going to say, or, what questions do we need answered when we're reaching out to somebody to find out whether this is a good deal and be able to better analyze the situation as well.
Yeah. I mean, I've, coaching people, I've heard them, they'll tell me about a call and I'd say, oh, well, where are they going? And they're like, oh, I didn't ask that. I'm like, well, how are you going to buy the house if you don't know where they're going? Where they, how is that even possible? But you forget these things. That's why it's good to have at least an outline.
Exactly.
And I agree. The best way to use a script is to use it as an outline. But people who use the script religiously, which is how people use VAs, they miss all the good stuff because they just go to the next question no matter what. They're not following up on the actual answers when they go off to the side. And that's how you really get sales in the end. I'm curious though, you did it in New Jersey. What town was it in and what was your first wholesale spread? Because that's what people always want. And New Jersey usually has pretty good wholesale spreads, but it's a tough market all over New Jersey.
Yeah. So we actually, I'm trying to think the first one was we had first two were back to back.
Yeah.
Let me see. I actually have it here. I'm blanking on the city now that I haven't lived in New York for a couple of years. I am so sorry. I'm blanking on it. I think maybe
I'm
I'm
asking
getting
because I
nervous.
live there, so don't worry about it. Yeah, but I'm just curious about like how much you made, because one thing that I found with new wholesalers is they try to hit a home run on the first one so they can get quicker. But if you just hit singles and take a 5,000 or 10,000 instead of trying to get 25,000, you're getting more reps and you're getting more experience. So you're going to get better. So then your spreads will go up as you make better deals off market.
Yeah. I'm sorry. I'm trying to think. I believe it was Edison. I just wanted
Oh
to make
yeah,
sure I wasn't chopping that up as I was like, was
yeah.
it Elizabeth Edison? Okay.
Yeah.
It was Edison, which was our first one. And we had in mind initially to go in, and our idea was to make 10,000 per wholesale. That was, the ballpark
Yeah.
that we were given. But we did come down, and I wouldn't say that we were desperate, but we were just like, oh, this is such a good deal. Like, we can't lose it because of
Yeah.
the cost, like an extra couple thousand. So we closed, our earnings on that was $8,000
Yeah.
for our first wholesale.
I think that's great, though. I think that's
Mhm.
also smart. And I think if you can clear 5K on a first wholesale, I think it's an absolute win. Sometimes if you don't clear anything, it's still a win because you learn a lot and try to put it into the next one. After you got those first two back to back, you said like, well, now we have a different level of confidence. So now we can be a little more aggressive. And part of being good at wholesaling is also knowing, this house would be a good deal, but not at their price. So I'm going to pass. But in the
Yes.
beginning, you're like kind of trying to lock up anything that you can.
True. Yes. And I think for the first few, we, I wouldn't say took anything because we did work our way up to around 10,000, but it took
Yeah.
us a while to inch above or even get daring enough to try to work in 12,000. And eventually we're, working 11,200 or like we were like mixing it up, trying to earn a little bit more. We're like, oh, it's an extra $100 or whatever
Yeah.
it may be. And we did that for a while until we eventually started working our way up to $15,000 or so. And I know our largest one time was $18,000, but then we still, even to this day, we stopped wholesaling for a while because when we started building our portfolio. So our focus wasn't so much on wholesaling, but now going back to it a little bit, just because of certain opportunities that are coming in, we still average around that $10,000 for the most parts, depending upon the opportunity. And we just have to take a look at the numbers on the spreadsheet. And I always say the numbers don't lie. So we just put it in the spreadsheet, no matter what you think. Once we put it in the spreadsheet, it all makes sense.
Yeah, but also people forget that the sellers, they should know what the spread is, but they also see it at closing. So when it's 10,000, that's palatable. When it's 50,000, they're going to be, what are you talking about? Like, give me 25,000 of that. So that's where wholesalers have trouble. That's why I think it's really smart. And the only way that you can scale is to keep your spreads, smart, because you just can't do volume if you're trying to get 40,000 on each one. They're all going to get stacked up against each other.
True. And I would say the only deals that we've gotten larger sums, closer to $40,000, $50,000, are in New York City specifically, because you're talking a $1.2, $1.6 million property. So it makes sense to be able to work in a higher spread there compared to a $200,000 house.
Yeah.
Hey, it's Jonathan. I hope you're enjoying this episode with Laura. And you might be thinking, I don't know, that sounds like a lot of work what she did. She started from absolutely the ground up with no money, got it done, and she's done a great job. But maybe you don't want to do that exact same hustle. So if you don't want to do it and you want to find a way for somebody else to do it for you, you might want to consider my friends at Rent to Retirement. So that's how you can discover how to retire on your terms and timeline by investing in turnkey rental income properties. If you're interested in turnkey, you can go to my link at bit.ly, and that's always bit.ly/R2RZen. Let's get back to Laura.
So when did you start transitioning and knowing that you could start buying your own properties, and how did you do it money-wise?
Yeah, so that was in 2019. We figured, okay, now we are a little bit more financially secure. Our student loans were paid off. Most of our credit cards were down to very little. And we decided to start looking and building our portfolio. So it was in 2019 in, I say upstate. Everything's upstate to me outside of New York City, but it's not considered upstate.
No, New Yorkers know that upstate's Buffalo, but I still think of upstate. I'm like, oh, that's Woodstock,
Exactly.
That's just because it's upstate to me.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So we started looking initially in Orange County, New York. So that's
Yeah.
not too far from the city, about an hour north. And that's where we started growing our real estate portfolio. So it was Orange County. It was a really small little place that we found. We put in an offer of $15,000.
Oh, wow.
It was like super small. And we
Yeah.
figured, oh, this is such a great area because I'm forgetting the name of it. There's a military academy right next to it.
Mhm.
And we're like, okay, this is great. People come Airbnb if they want a little bit of wilderness, but at
Yeah.
the same time, anyways, that first one that we put in an offer on and we really thought we were going to get it, we lost it.
Yeah.
So we didn't get it. Anyways, we continued looking later on that summer. We found another one still in Orange County, just a little higher up. And it was a good first start. So I would say for our first couple of properties, we were traditionally financing. So we're getting traditional loans.
And these price points are low, so it's accessible, at least at the time.
Yeah. So the first one we actually ended up buying it was over 100, but it was still on the lower side.
Yeah.
Worked. We were like, okay, this is going to work. But the next one we bought was up towards the Catskills. Now we're looking around $400,000 or so. But we had land and we had other plans. We're going to add a venue. We're going to add tiny homes in the back. So we had a whole idea of what else was going to go into that. Yeah. So we were traditionally financing this. We got conventional loans, eventually FHA loan. So that's what we were doing until eventually we felt that we were capped out and although we both had full-time jobs, we had a good income. It's that debt to income ratio that we started getting caught up on, that we knew that if we wanted to continue scaling, that we were going to have to look at other sources. And then there was also the business protection. Part of that was because we didn't want everything in our names. So that was a whole other transition, is moving things out of our names into our LLCs and the trust and everything else down the road as well.
Yeah. Yeah. No, were you excited about using any of these properties, or were these all straight investments? Because a lot of people, their first one, they're like, oh, I mean, maybe I can go up there too if you like the area. And then you kind of get that bonus about it.
Yeah, so I would say the first one was that we didn't plan to ever live in it. It was just like, okay, well, it could be a little getaway every now and then, the excitement there. Other than that, the next one we bought, it has a main house. It has 17 acres. There's a barn in the back. So we planned the main house we'll use.
Yeah.
So that's the one in New York. Eventually we separate parcels so that it's still all in kind of the process there, but use the main house as our getaway that we go to several months of the year.
Yeah.
And then setting up a venue in the back, have the Airbnb on the side. So there are other uses to that, but we do use that still to this day. And then eventually another one that we bought, we used for time being until renting it out. And that one was in Florida. So when we went down to Florida, we got a property, we fixed it up, we lived in it while fixing it up.
Yeah.
So we did use 2 of those personally.
Yeah. And then at some point you started to get into using other people's money and more creative finance. What led you? I mean, I know what led you to that. There was not a lot of money left with the DTI, but how did you start to get good at that? Because it's hard to get money from other people, but you're starting to establish a proof of concept. And then how did you also work in creative?
Yeah, so it was a combination. So now we're in 2023, the beginning of 2023. I was still working full time. We had 2 children. We knew that we wanted to potentially plan to grow our family a little more. And my job was very, I mean, both of our jobs are very time consuming, but late nights, weekends, so plenty of travel. And part of that transition was me making that decision that, or not just myself, my husband and I alongside, that I was going to transition, leave work, and focus on real estate full time. And again, it was like one of those decisions, like when we first took out that $30,000 loan 8 years earlier, was what am I doing? This was my career that I always thought success to me was working my way up the corporate ladder. And I'm not saying that isn't success. It just eventually for me and my priorities changed and I wanted to be home with my family more. So made a decision to leave corporate, sitting at home thinking, okay, we made this work before. How do we continue to make it work and actually replace the income that I left behind as well.
Yeah.
So it was a combination. It was one, really going out and really networking. It's like, networking works, but then having to remind yourself that you really need to go out and reestablishing that effort. So one was going out and networking just virtually, in person as well. And within that first year, I think the things that I feel like really led to success is one, consistency. You got to show up every day. If you really want it to replace an income, you need to show up every day like it is your actual job.
Yeah.
Two is going out and networking. I feel like that was what led to the most success I had in year one. And then taking some of those relationships that I had from years prior and people that I knew that used creative financing, reaching back out to them, reestablishing those relationships, relying on them for, mentorship, information, them referring me to other folks as well. And so again, just going back to that networking that really got me amongst hard money lenders, private money lenders, getting my mind wrapped around the idea of syndication, that we knew that, okay, if we're going to scale, we need to use OPM and creative financing. Again, I use them, or not say leverage them, but the inspiration for me. They did it. They were just like me before, maybe a different story, but very similar situation. And now look at them. They have, 100 doors or whatever it may be. So it was very inspiring to me. And ultimately, I would say that was it in year one, was networking and the consistency of showing up every day, making those relationships, stepping out of your comfort zone. So those three things was going out to events, stepping out of your comfort zone, networking, and being consistent. That I made those relationships, and eventually through those relationships and the referrals of the other people that introduced me to them, actually backing me as well. And then using our portfolio, although it was small, but using that and our experience from prior to as well leverage our capability in making this work. And again, it's the first one that's harder to get, and eventually it gets a little easier thereafter as well.
Yeah, it must have helped, though, that you had a few properties under your belt, so you kind of knew what was going on, and you had done wholesaling. So your dialogue when you go back to networking is different than it was the first time when you're just like, we don't know anything, tell us what to do. Now you have your own experience to add to the mix. And I've found that sometimes, even when you find someone who's done a little less than you, and then you're telling them, then you're really helping yourself, because you're like, okay, we're past this stage, and that helps we're a little bit further ahead. You're not all the way back at the beginning.
Exactly.
Yeah. So what assets were you looking for as you started to try to scale up with other people's money and looking for other options?
Yeah. So we focused on single family homes. All were single family homes. We're barely now looking into going into multifamily now. And that's almost 2 years later. It'll be 2 years in May. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I mean, is it geographical? Are you trying to collect them all in a similar area so that your management will be easier? Or are you looking all over the place?
Yeah, so the answer is no. And I wish that was something that maybe I thought about a little bit more strategically before. We were just like bouncing on any opportunities that came. We're like, oh, that's a great opportunity. Let's jump on it. Let's make an offer. We have the money, or whatever it may be. But no, they're not all geographically together. So we currently invest in 6 different states. So we have New York, Florida, Georgia, Tennessee, only one, but Tennessee, New Jersey, and Pennsylvania. So we're in 6 states.
Yeah.
Makes management a little more challenging. So we have used management companies. That's a little challenging within itself. Thought about, it's been recommended to us many times by others to just manage yourself and hire full-time internally. That's not something that we've done yet. So I try to manage a lot myself as well, which is very time consuming as well. But that's, I guess, part of our growth personally as well, is to figure that out in the long run as to what's going to best suit us, manage across 6 states, which all have different laws and requirements for tenants versus landlords.
Yeah,
and so
some
forth.
Easier than others. Yeah, and I've just found that when you only have one property, say I think you said you have one in Tennessee, when you have one, you're just not that attractive to the property management companies because it's just one door for them. So you don't really have your choice of the best out there. And if you do, you're going to have to pay a lot more, but you're still buying good assets. So if you're buying good assets, you can always retrade them later. In terms of the ones that you've bought, have you sold any, or are you holding everything that you guys have bought in the beginning? Because there always comes a time for investors when they need to look over the portfolio and say,
yeah, you know what, these two we're not as
Mhm.
thrilled with them as we were, and then use those to repurpose into just better options.
Yeah, so I think that that's where we are currently is reviewing our portfolio
Yeah.
because, we started with the 4 properties that we purchased traditional financing, and then we scaled so quickly within 16, 17 months. So we're up to 21 doors. And at first it was all just growth. Let's grow, grow, grow.
Yeah.
And now we're taking a look back at starting to review some of those and figuring out, okay, does it make more sense to continue renting this out?
Yeah.
And then also just comparing to where the market has taken with appreciation for that property. Should we sell it, or is it, the spread not significant enough yet? So we're starting to do that now. And I feel like, again, we're in the learning
Yeah.
experience of as far as that, because we hadn't really had to do that prior to. It'll be 2 years in May that I left my job full time. We grew so quickly, and now starting to really go back and analyze our portfolio ourselves and figure out the next steps we want to take.
Yeah. Are those all long-term rentals, or are you doing any short-term or mid-term in some of those?
Yeah, so it's a mix between short term and long term. Yeah, just depending, more suburban areas, things that are closer around Orlando, or short term up in the Catskills area, short term, just
Yeah.
because it makes more sense for us. Like, not to say nobody wants to rent long term up in the Catskills, but it's not really a destination or what we would make for a long term rental versus short term. It just depends on the area.
Yeah. And I mean, those are two different styles of management, because obviously short term is more upkeep than your long term. So you have to figure
Mhm.
out that part as well. Are you in active management on the short term rentals, or do you have somebody helping as well? Because that's where a lot of people, you can't really make mistakes with short term, because one review can just crush you in the algorithm. How have
Mhm.
you guys handled that as you grow in numbers of short term rentals?
Yeah, so far I've been handling, between my husband and myself, but myself have been handling the management of that. It's getting a little more challenging, just especially in the states that we aren't present in,
Yeah.
is challenging. So we're trying to figure that out as well. I feel like we're in that learning curve with trying to figure out what the best approach is for handling those long term as well.
Yeah, when you were scaling up and you got to this amount, did you think during the way, like, hey, we're going too fast, or do you just think, let's just acquire because we have these opportunities now?
Honestly, I think initially it was just, let's acquire. We're growing. Eventually we halted ultimately and figured, okay, let's figure out our longer term strategy.
Yeah.
Let's spend some of the money instead of just acquiring, fixing them up. So many of them took some work to some degree, some a little more work than others when we initially acquired it, before even being able to rent it out. But now looking back at it and also deciding, so we haven't acquired, we are starting to get into, I guess, acquiring mode again, but at a slower pace is our plan. So maybe a handful of properties this year is our plan, but then also using some of that money to renovate to a different degree some of these properties and make them, I don't know, to say specialty rentals. So just giving them more of a theme, or
Yeah.
especially the short-term rentals. We're also building out a venue in New York. So using some of the funds to clear land and to build out over there as well. So it's just figuring or reallocating some of those reallocating some of the funds
Yeah.
instead of just using it to grow right now.
Yeah, and for all the deals, where are you finding the deals? I mean, are you using realtors? Are you using off-market sources? Are you sourcing yourself? How are you guys getting the inflow that led you to these properties?
Yeah, so realtors initially, well, some of it was realtors, some were referrals. Some of us, again, were ourselves still driving for dollars and reaching out. And although we weren't full-time, or I wouldn't say full-time, regularly driving for dollars, it's something that I think is just built into us now as a habit when we're driving anywhere. And
Yeah,
I
I'm
think
the
our
same.
kids,
Yeah.
my oldest will just maybe not roll his eyes, but like, why are we turning around? We're like, oh, we're going to go look at this house real quick. We're
Yeah,
just going to
don't
drive
worry
by.
about it. Yeah, we want to see if that
Exactly.
window's really fallen in, because that would be good. And they're like, why would it be good? Just don't worry about it. Just
Exactly.
That was me as a kid riding in the back of my car. Why are we stopping here again? There's no windows on the house. Exactly. That's why we're stopping.
Yeah, exactly. So that's what we were doing initially. And then we eventually started running ads. So, and then that's what also got us back into wholesaling a little bit, because when we were running ads, we were getting, I wouldn't say an influx, but a good amount of leads coming in, that some of those we're figuring, okay, we'll start using them we'll wholesale them, but then we'll also start acquiring again ourselves through this year, but maybe more strategically, but we can still use the ads to wholesale some of these properties because some of them are just such great opportunities at 50 to 70% ARV. So looking at them in every opportunity we spreadsheet and look at them like, oh, like this will be a great one for us. But no, we're not planning to buy there right now or buy period. So yeah.
How did you, when guys were new as wholesalers, how did you figure out the repair costs? Because that's a very hard thing for wholesalers because of course, you're locking up a property and you're turning out to somebody else. And when you turn it out, they're going to want to know what you think the repair costs so they know what they could make on it. But it's hard when you don't have the experience.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a great question. So initially our mentor had provided us estimates. So when you do a walkthrough or whatever it may be, if it's just paint and carpet or this and that, maybe 5,000 to 10,000 or whatever it may be. So she gave us a scale.
Some ballparks,
so ballpark, and that's really what we relied on. So we relied on that so heavily from the beginning, and most of them, we didn't have any complaints from our buyer on any of them coming back to us and being like, there is just so much more.
Yeah. Well, also, you were, again, going back to what you said before, you were only taking an 8 to 10, 12,000 spread. So that's much more reasonable. If you took a 40, that bites into the profit that they can make.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So we really relied on that general ballpark scale that she provided us in the beginning and giving us that idea of what to look for when we did walk through. And not all the properties we had the opportunity to walk through entirely as well. So that's what we used until we eventually started going in. And it was such a learning experience even when we did start investing, because when we had our first, second, and third property going in, and we didn't know exactly what to ballpark for a lot of these projects that we did within the properties, because it's a learning experience again, is networking and finding the right contractors. Because if you're using services from Home Depot and Lowe's, they're so much more expensive. And that's what we were doing initially until we eventually started learning again to going out and getting referrals from other contractors and buying our own materials and so forth.
That's a big one. Yeah. So, so say there's a brand new investor, you're at a conference, someone walks up to you, they say, I've heard you speak before, I saw something on social media. What should I do to get started? Would you recommend that somebody starts in wholesaling right now?
I think that so I do get that question pretty frequently, and I don't necessarily think wholesaling is for everybody, again, because I feel like some start and they have a certain idea of their success that they're going to have or a timeline, and they get discouraged so quickly.
Oh yeah, you mean when they send 4 postcards and they're like, I didn't get anything back. This wholesaling doesn't work.
Exactly. But at the same time, I do always recommend to them that they go out and drive for dollars or still do it, because it gives such a good mental idea as far as what to look for. So even if you're going to go out and you're looking for your own property, you know what to look for, estimating repairs, or just giving you different ideas as far as that. But I do think wholesaling is such a good strategy to get started with, especially if you have no funds available to you. But then again, another thing that I teach and share a lot as well is you don't necessarily need to wait until you have a large sum of savings to put down as a down payment, because that's something that I wish I had subjected myself to a lot earlier on, is creative financing. And maybe we would have been able to start growing our portfolio back in 2019, or not growing. We did start growing it, but start scaling it or using OPM instead of just saving up, because we were saving up. We were saving, $20,000, $40,000 for a down payment or whatever it may be to close on a traditional loan.
Yeah. And brand new people can also go work for a larger scale wholesaler also. So you're kind of in there. It is hard. You guys had each other and you had the course that you took, but some people don't. And they're like, I'm a wholesaler. I'm like, how do you know what you're doing? I have no idea. So you can find, even if it's not the greatest fit and you don't make a bunch of money, you're going to learn a lot by just taking all their appointments or doing the calls. So there's options out there, because there's definitely wholesalers everywhere.
Exactly.
And don't you think that would be a good experience for someone? No money, no contacts, but they just want to get some reps in before they actually see if maybe they don't like it. That's a good way to know if you're even going to enjoy it.
Yeah, that's true too. And I have recommended that to some individuals as well, as going out and just getting that experience. So it's not all about solely what you're going to make, but getting that experience, because it really is invaluable to taking that experience that you're getting working with somebody who is more experienced, and then being able to go apply it on by yourself now and build your own business with it as well.
Yeah, I mean, one of the problems we've had now, and you do know New Jersey a little, but New Jersey has a lot of daisy chain wholesaling. So you see like the same property sent out by 3 people, and then like, well, how many spreads are in here? And that becomes a problem. So you really like have to figure out in each market who's the most reputable wholesalers. I've found, and I want to get your take on it, the ones who know the ARV and the repair costs, those are the ones that I trust. If the numbers are right, they know what they're doing. And the numbers are usually wrong.
Yeah.
Even if you're in the ballpark, it's good, but sometimes they're just ludicrous. Like I got one the other day that said, 5K repairs, and I pulled up the pictures and I was just like, I'm just unsubscribed. This is not.
Oh yes, I know exactly. My husband and I were just talking about a deal this morning that we had a very similar conversation on an opportunity. He went out to go see it yesterday, and we're like, yeah, that's not even close. It's going to take a lot more.
Yeah. But that's a really important thing, because you said like your husband went out there, and when I was doing more off-market marketing when I started, I would just go out on all the appointments. And then I realized 9 out of 10 were terrible because I didn't ask the right questions before I got there. So I'd go out there and they'd say they want 600 and it's worth 400. So why did I just, do an hour each way to have that conversation? So
Yes.
did you find that your vetting up front can save you an enormous amount of time, which you can then repurpose into better sellers?
Yeah. And I think that that's something that I would say that we learned through the years on how to get a lot better at is vetting and pre-screening. So we have multiple stages of pre-screening with initial set. So especially in our marketing, when we run marketing ads, an initial set of questions, and then they'll get the email and the text message with another set of questions. And then they book a call.
Yeah.
And then they book a call with us. So now we have a number of questions already answered, but we're able to dig a little deeper into some of that. So we're screening them again and really figuring out whether they're really motivated, because some people sign up as well and they just want to know what their house is going for, ballpark, and they have no intention in really selling or anything of that sort. So we don't want to waste our time, their time, resources, or anything of that sort. And we don't go out and see all opportunities nowadays. Still, it really just depends on the opportunity, the timeline, and the sale price as well. So especially anything over $1 million, we'll typically go out and see.
Yeah, I mean, because you could just miss something big or miss the block, and Google Maps isn't updated every day. Be great if it was, but you could be looking at 2 years old a photo and not really know, and they may use that to their advantage.
Exactly.
Yeah. So where do you guys want to go now? I know you said you're starting to look into multifamily for the first time now.
Yeah, so we're looking into multifamily. We're also looking into commercial because we have other plans with the entrepreneur side.
Yeah.
So we're looking into commercial, which is a whole animal of itself.
Yeah, it's different.
Within itself. Exactly. So I would say that those are our plans within the next year. We do plan this year maybe to add another handful of properties to our portfolio, just a little more strategically. And then also just really reinvesting in the properties that we have now. So whether taking some off of our book and selling them, or just reinvesting some of that capital that we have or earnings into some of these properties to further develop them.
Yeah, because some properties appreciate, but their general cash flow is not that great. So when you take the appreciation and say, okay, we can sell, we can either 1031 or we can even just take the tax hit, but repurpose that money into a different market that cash flows twice as much. It's just a smart move. But as you said, I mean, I think, new investors have to say, like, there is this culture of we want to get the doors, but sometimes, like, you guys, you get to the 21 and you're like, wait, all of these aren't the best. That one we never should have bought. We have it, we fixed it. But I think you made a really good point that a lot of it is also maintenance. You need to look at your whole profile of properties and see, like, all right, we're either going to get rid of it as it is and not do the repairs, and maybe we're not going to make as much, or we're going to do the repairs because now we're going to make more. And sometimes that depends when tenants move out. It gives you an opportunity. But it sounds like part of your focus is really making sure that all the properties you have are still ones that you want, and then deciding on those this year if there's a better option out there.
Exactly. And I think there's probably 2 or 3 properties within our portfolio now that we are watching a little more closely to figure out whether it makes sense to list them or rent them out long term, because one of them is short term, is not doing so well as a short term. I think it's just because of the area as well, but then just figuring out what the strategy is there.
Yeah, but it is nice for single family home investors to have these options of short term, midterm, and long term. So you can kind of play around with it. A lot of areas work for midterm. Short term can be specific and it's market dependent as well. But, it's nice. When I was growing up and we had a bunch of single families, like they were all long-term rentals. We stayed in a lot of short-term rentals, but we never really did them when I was very young with my dad. Those properties were just regular rentals and they worked well because he, like you guys, was just a driving for dollars type of person before the internet. And going back to how we started, I really think that if people are getting started now, I think they should focus on the old school techniques because everybody's doing this texting and stuff that everybody can do that. If you're doing handwritten letters and you're like, hey, we're a new couple, we're trying to find our first property for investment. We live in the area, we walk our dog by. You're going to get a call back if they're even remotely interested, but you're not if you text them, hey, Harry, are you looking to sell your home? They get 100 of those a day because they've owned it 15 years, so they're on the list. Do you agree with that?
I completely agree with that. And just making every outreach a little more personable helps you with your success with it overall. Because again, if you're sending the same text that 50 other investors are sending out on a daily basis, I know even for myself from random ad campaigns I get, I'm delete.
My whole day is unsubscribing and deleting things.
Exactly.
Or now I'm so crazy though, and it does go up on my social media sometime. When I get the text, now I like to play games with them because I'm really annoyed. Like I get so many a day, and now I'd like to go down the rabbit hole and just play around for a little while. And they've gone like crazy on me, and it's just like they're just VAs somewhere. It's not even a regular. I know they're just a VA. I don't know where they could be in America. They could be outside. I don't know. But it's like, I don't know what they're getting so mad about. I know that they're fake. They don't even get my name right 90% of the time. So I always say like, who's Bob? And then they don't respond. It's like, this is so silly. Like you're not even trying. You don't even have the right person.
No, yeah, my husband actually does that personally. He gets a kick out of it every now and then, or he'll get the phone call and he answers and he cracks me up. But some of them he'll answer and he does these voice impersonations, like joking around. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm over here and I'm like partially embarrassed, but laughing. And he's like, they don't know who I am. Hey, and I'll hang up. I'm like, oh my gosh.
They're just getting what they deserve for not adding that little bit of personality to it and making sure that it's correct. I've always said, if you spend more time vetting your list, you'll have 90% better calls than if you're just, on a call machine on Mojo or something, just dialing and you're, somebody answered. Now you look at the screen and it just tells you their name is, Randy. And they sold it. They sold it 3 years ago, or it's a renter. It's just the systems aren't that great still. Even how great technology is, it's still not the same as trying to build those one-to-one connections.
Exactly.
Awesome. Well, it's been a pleasure to speak to you. Where is the best place for people to get in touch with you and learn more about what you do at lauranavaquin.com?
Yeah, I would say my website, lauranavaquin.com, or social media. I know I need to be a little bit more active on there. But
it's
social media, I do show up, especially Instagram. I try to show up almost on a daily basis. But between LinkedIn, Instagram, and my website, I would say are the best sources to reach out to me.
Yeah.
But I do love hearing from everybody, whether you're asking questions or sharing a story. I do love hearing from everybody.
Yeah, well, I appreciate the time. And I think it's good because you guys are still pretty new to it. You've accumulated a lot, but you really had some good stories about what people can take from it and maybe what they should do on their journey, because it is changing what's available. Obviously, with rates, people are going to be needing to look for more creative and more OPM, and they have to, figure out how they're going to get there. So thanks so much for spending this time with us.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I enjoyed our conversation.
Yeah, me too. All right. That was Laura Navaquin. Again, you can find her at lauranavaquin.com or on social, where she is active, but maybe not as active as all of those people on TikTok. And neither am I. I'm Jonathan Green. We'll see you next episode.
Thanks for sticking around to the end so you can get a preview of who's coming up on episode 242 of Zen and the Art of Real Estate Investing. And my guest is Ben Carmona of Perch Wealth. What is that? Solutions for your 1031 exchange without the hassle of day-to-day management. 1031 show, we've done a few of them, and they're always a good opportunity to figure out how to use your money and how to create the snowball. We'll see you next episode with Ben.